There is a pyramid in Egypt that most people are never shown. It is not golden, it is not perfect, and it was never meant to last. Far away from Giza's bright monuments, standing alone in the dark sands of Dashur, there is a massive black shape, silent, broken, watching time pass. This pyramid was built for a king, but the king never slept inside it. Beneath it, there is no simple tomb. There is a maze, a labyrinth designed to confuse the living and trap the dead. Tonight, we will walk slowly into this forgotten structure, down through its underground corridors, into a place that even its creator abandoned. This is the story of the Black Pyramid of Dashur. And as the desert wind moves across its cracked stones, you may begin to feel how even giants can sink when time decides to pull them down. Our story begins not with a pharaoh's triumph, but with a moment of profound architectural daring, and perhaps haunting doubt. It is the 19th century BCE, during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Pharaoh Amenemhat III, one of Egypt's most powerful and long-reigning rulers, seeks a tomb that will defy time and thieves. But instead of choosing the stable limestone plateaus of Giza, his architects look to Dashur, a site closer to his capital, Ichtoi, but with a treacherous secret beneath its sands, a foundation of unstable clay and groundwater. The pyramid they envision is monumental, intended to be clad in fine Tura limestone, gleaming white under the sun. But fate, geology, and perhaps the king's own ambition will dictate otherwise. The structure we see today is the raw, skeletal form of that vision, a core of dark, mud brick and rough stone, exposed after its gleaming casing was stripped away by time and later builders. It is this dark core that gives the pyramid its name and its eerie, imposing presence. As you begin to settle into this journey, let the wind guide your imagination. Picture the Egyptian night, vast and star-strewn. The Milky Way arches over the desert like a celestial river mirroring the Nile below. And there, against that cosmic backdrop, is a shape so massive it seems to absorb the starlight. The Black Pyramid does not shine, it swallows light. Its silhouette is jagged, ruined, its apex broken, not by violence, but by a slow, relentless sinking. It looks less like a tomb and more like a natural formation, a mountain that has always been here, guarding secrets too heavy for the sand to hold. This is not merely a building. It is a geological event. A human-made mountain that has been engaged in a silent, millennia-long duel with the very earth upon which it stands. It is a sentinel, dark, damaged, and profoundly alone. But why does this pyramid feel so different? Giza's pyramids speak of celestial alignment, divine ascent, and eternal glory. The Black Pyramid whispers of ambition, anxiety, and earthbound struggle. Its darkness is not just visual, it is thematic. It represents a shift in the Egyptian soul, from the confident solar cults of the Old Kingdom to the more introspective, Osirian concerns of the Middle Kingdom, where the afterlife was a labyrinthine journey through darkness before reaching the light. Tonight, we will not rush. We will stand before this dark sentinel and let its silence speak. We will feel the cool desert air on our skin, hear the skitter of sand across its weathered bricks, and sense the weight of the thousands of years it has witnessed. This pyramid was never finished as intended. It was, in many ways, a cursed project from the start. And yet, in its failure, it became something far more interesting than a perfect tomb. It became a story. A story of a pharaoh who tried to cheat death with stone, only to have the stone betray him. A story of a labyrinth so complex it was meant to confuse eternal spirits. A story of an empty sarcophagus in a crumbling chamber. And a story of sand, water, and time, patiently reclaiming what was always theirs. So, as the wind continues to blow across the Dashur plain, let your mind's eye travel to that dark shape. We are not here to solve its mysteries tonight. We are here to listen to them, to feel the awe it inspires, not the awe of perfection, but the awe of endurance, of melancholy beauty, of a monument that accepted its own ruin and wore it like a crown of shadows. This is the Dark Sentinel, and it has been waiting for you. Let the wind settle for a moment. Now, imagine the first light of dawn creeping across the eastern desert. The stars fade, and the sky shifts from indigo to a soft, dusty blue. In this half-light, the Black Pyramid reveals its true form, not as a mere silhouette, but as a colossal, fractured presence. The rising sun does not strike its sides with a golden glow. Instead, it draws out the deep, earthy tones of its exposed core, burnt umber, shadowy gray, and the near black of sun-baked mud brick. It looks less like a monument to the sun god Ra, and more like an offering to the earth itself, or to the underworld. As the light grows, details emerge. You can see the massive, uneven courses of stone, laid nearly 4,000 years ago. The outer casing stones, once smooth and white, are almost entirely gone, plundered over centuries for other buildings, leaving the rough inner core exposed like the bones of a great beast. Near the base, the desert sand has risen, as if the pyramid is slowly being swallowed. Great vertical cracks run up its sides, testaments to the unstable ground beneath. This is not a static ruin, it is a slow-motion collapse frozen across millennia. The sheer scale is humbling. Originally, it stood over 75 meters tall. Even in its ruined state, it dominates the flat landscape. But its power lies not in perfection, but in its stark, broken majesty. It does not try to impress you with geometry, it overwhelms you with presence. It is a mountain that should not be here, built by hands that believed they could conquer nature, only to be humbled by it. Why here? Why did Amenemhat III choose this unstable patch of desert so close to the Nile's floodplain? The answer lies in politics, piety, and practicality. Dashur was closer to his administrative capital, Ichtoi, than Giza. It was a royal necropolis already sanctified by earlier pharaohs, like Sneferu, who built the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid nearby. But there was also a deeper, more symbolic reason. Dashur represented a link to the past, a continuity of royal power. By building here, Amenemhat III was anchoring his legacy in sacred ground. Yet, the ground was not sacred, it was soft. Modern archaeologists and geophysicists have discovered that the pyramid was built on a thick layer of saturated clay. Instead of excavating down to bedrock, the ancient engineers, perhaps under pressure from the pharaoh's timeline, built directly on this unstable substrate. They may have tried to mitigate the risk with drainage systems and compacted layers of sand and gravel, but it was a fundamental miscalculation. Almost as soon as construction reached a significant height, the structure began to sink and shift. Cracks appeared. Walls strained. One can imagine the whispers among the overseers, the hurried consultations with priests and architects. Did the pharaoh know? Did he walk through his unfinished tomb, feeling the subtle tremors underfoot, seeing the hairline fractures in the newly laid corridors? There is a haunting human drama here. The greatest ruler of his age, commanding the resources of a mighty kingdom, being defied not by enemies or gods, but by mud. As you contemplate this, let the soundscape deepen. The wind softens, replaced by the subtle, deep creak of settling stone, a sound felt more in the mind than in the ears. It is the sound of mass, of weight, of time pressing down. Occasionally, there's a faint trickle, like grains of sand slipping through an unseen fissure. This is the pyramid's own slow exhalation, the sound of its eternal adjustment to the earth below. Now, shift your perspective. Move closer. Stand at the base, where the sand meets stone. Touch the surface, not with your hand, but with your mind. The bricks are rough, pitted by wind-blown sand over centuries. They are cool in the dawn shadow, holding the night's chill. They are not uniform. Some are large, some small, packed with a mortar made of sand, clay, and straw. This is not the pristine, machine-like precision of Giza. This is handiwork, human labor on an almost incomprehensible scale. Each brick was shaped, carried, laid by someone whose name is lost to time, whose sweat is long dried, whose hopes and fears are as invisible as the air. And above you, the pyramid rises, blocking the sky. You feel small, not just in size but in time. This structure was ancient when Cleopatra ruled, when Rome fell, when the first pyramids were rediscovered by Arab scholars. It has seen deserts shift, empires rise and crumble, and the very climate change. It has witnessed silence for most of its life, broken only by the wind, the occasional scorpion, and the rare, daring visit of a curious traveler. Yet, for all its isolation, the Black Pyramid was never truly alone. It was part of a vast complex, a valley temple connected by a causeway, a mortuary temple at its base, smaller satellite pyramids for queens, and mastabas for nobles. Most of these are now mounds under the sand, outlines visible only from the air or to the trained eye of an archaeologist. The pyramid itself was not just a tomb, it was the heart of a miniature city of the dead, a carefully ordered universe designed to serve the pharaoh's afterlife. But as the sun climbs higher, warming the stone, we remember the central irony. This city of the dead was built on ground that could not hold it. The pharaoh's dream of eternity was compromised from the foundation up. The dark sentinel, then, becomes a symbol of something profoundly human: our struggle against impermanence, our desire to build legacies that outlast us, and the quiet, relentless forces that remind us of our limits. As we prepare to leave the exterior, to venture inward in the next chapter, hold this image: a broken, dark giant under the desert sun, standing not in triumph, but in patient, stubborn defiance. It did not achieve the perfection its builders sought, but in its failure, it achieved something else: a kind of rugged, melancholy immortality. It became a story written in stone and sand, a riddle waiting in plain sight. As the sun reaches its zenith over Dashur, the Black Pyramid ceases to be merely an object in the landscape. It becomes a living entity, a chronicle written in shadow, stone, and silence. The harsh light now reveals every fracture, every eroded edge, every stain left by millennia of rain and wind. The pyramid is not a single color, but a tapestry of time: deep ochre where iron-rich minerals have seeped to the surface, charcoal black in the recesses where shadows never fully retreat, and pale, dusty gray where the stone has been scoured clean by the desert's breath. In this noonday stillness, the pyramid's most haunting quality emerges: its silence. Not the absence of sound, but a presence of quiet so deep it feels audible. It is the silence of a held breath, of a secret kept too long. This silence is not empty, it is charged with memory. If you listen, not with your ears, but with your imagination, you might hear echoes: the distant chime of copper chisels striking stone, the rhythmic chant of laborers hauling bricks, the murmured prayers of priests consecrating this ground as sacred. All these sounds are gone, absorbed into the stone, leaving behind a resonant, wordless hum, the sound of time itself, distilled. Now let us step back, not in space, but in perspective. See the pyramid not as a ruin, but as it was intended: a perfect, smooth-sided mountain of white limestone, blazing under the Egyptian sun like a beacon of order against the chaotic desert. It was meant to be a machine for resurrection, a ramp for the pharaoh's soul to climb to the stars. Its alignment with cardinal directions, its hidden chambers, its intricate passages, all were designed according to sacred geometry and spells from the pyramid texts, meant to guide Amenemhat III through the perils of the afterlife. Yet, even in its idealized form, the Black Pyramid would have been different. Its location, its darker core materials, its complex interior plan, all suggest a shift in theological thinking. The Old Kingdom pyramids were solar symbols, focusing on the pharaoh's ascent to join Ra in his celestial bark. The Middle Kingdom, and Amenemhat III's reign in particular, saw a growing emphasis on Osiris, the god of the underworld, resurrection, and fertile renewal. The afterlife was no longer just an upward journey to the sky. It was also a downward journey through the duat, the perilous realm of night, before emerging reborn at dawn. Thus, the Black Pyramid can be seen as a bridge between worlds, not just between earth and sky, but between light and dark, between the solar and the chthonic. Its darkness is not merely aesthetic, it is symbolic. It represents the fertile black silt of the Nile, the womb of the earth from which life springs each year. It represents the night through which the sun must travel before rising again. And, perhaps, it represents the acknowledgement of shadow that comes with great power, the loneliness, the weight, the unseen cracks in the foundation of a rain. This symbolic weight is mirrored in the physical weight that caused its decline. The pyramid, in its ambition, became a victim of its own mass. The very earth it was meant to dominate ultimately rejected it, softening beneath its corners, causing it to settle unevenly. Archaeologists believe the structural problems began during construction, forcing changes in design. Corridors were narrowed, chambers were reinforced with cedarwood beams, long since rotted away, and the entire burial suite was shifted slightly off its original axis, a frantic, hidden correction to a growing crisis. One can imagine the final days of active use. The mortuary temple at its base would have been alive with ritual. Incense smoke, offerings of food and drink, the solemn chants of the co-priests tasked with sustaining the pharaoh's spirit. But beneath their feet, in the dark heart of the pyramid, the walls were slowly cracking. The granite slabs of the burial chamber groaned under shifting pressures. Did the priests know? Did they feel a slight tremor during a silent prayer, see a trickle of dust from a ceiling joint? The pyramid, designed to be an eternal vessel, was already becoming a sinking ship. And then, it was abandoned. Not suddenly, but gradually. The cult of Amenemhat III persisted for a time, but the pyramid itself, compromised and dangerous, was likely sealed and left to its fate. The gleaming white casing stones, so painstakingly quarried and fitted, were eventually scavenged for other projects, leaving the dark core exposed. The Black Pyramid was stripped of its perfect skin, revealing the rough, honest truth of its construction and its failure. Yet, in that failure lies its enduring power. Perfection is distant, untouchable, cold. But a crack, a flaw, a story of struggle, that is something we can understand. That is human. The Dark Sentinel does not stand as a testament to invincible gods, but to striving, flawed, brilliant humanity. It is a monument not to success, but to the attempt. And in the long gaze of history, the attempt is often more compelling than the achievement. As the sun begins its descent, casting long purple shadows from the pyramid across the sand, we prepare to take our leave of the exterior. We have met the sentinel, felt its presence, heard its silent story. But its deepest secrets lie within, in the labyrinthine darkness beneath our feet. That journey, into the earth, into the mind of a pharaoh, into a maze meant to confuse eternity itself, awaits us in the next chapter. For now, as dusk settles over Dashur, let the pyramid return to silhouette. The stars emerge once more, and the great structure becomes a hole in the sky, a deeper darkness within the night. It is no longer a thing of stone, but a portal, a threshold, and it is waiting. Welcome back to the heart of the dark. We stand now not under the open desert sky, but beneath millions of tons of stone and earth. We have passed through the crude, sloping entrance on the pyramid's northern face, a portal that feels less like a doorway and more like a mouth, swallowing the daylight whole. This is the interior world of the Black Pyramid, a realm of shadow, complexity, and intentional disorientation. Forget the simple ascending corridors of Giza. Here, the architecture becomes psychology. This is not just a tomb, it is a labyrinth built to bewilder, not thieves, but spirits. Our descent begins along a steep, narrow passage chiseled through the core masonry. The air changes immediately. It is cooler, damper, carrying the scent of ancient dust and mineral seepage. The walls are close, rough-hewn, pressing in on either side. The light from the entrance fades rapidly behind us, swallowed by a darkness that feels physical, like a velvet curtain. If we were to bring a torch, its flame would flutter nervously, casting wild, dancing shadows that make the very walls seem to breathe. This first corridor is a feint, a deliberate misdirection. It slopes downward, leading the intruder, or the uninitiated spirit, to believe they are heading toward the burial chamber. But in the pyramid's original cunning design, this is merely the first twist in a much larger puzzle. About halfway down, a hidden shaft rises vertically into the darkness above, a secret escape route or a symbolic star shaft meant for the king's soul. But the main path continues, plunging deeper into the earth's embrace. The genius, and the terror, of Amenemhat III's pyramid lies in its duplication. Most pyramids have one burial suite. This pyramid has two. The first, now called the upper complex, is a series of chambers and corridors high in the pyramid's superstructure. The second, the lower complex, is dug deep into the desert bedrock beneath the pyramid's foundation. They are mirror images, doppelgangers of eternity. Was this a backup plan, born of the pharaoh's growing fear that his tomb was failing? Or was it a theological statement, a belief that the king needed two bodies of stone, one for his celestial form and one for his earthly form, to navigate both realms of the afterlife? We are heading to the lower complex, the true heart of the labyrinth. To reach it, we must navigate a series of false turns, blocked passages, and anticlimactic dead ends. The builders constructed blind corridors that lead only to blank walls. They created portcullis slots where massive granite slabs could be dropped to seal passages, though many were never used. They designed doors that look functional but open into nothingness. This was a maze meant to fatigue, to frustrate, to spiritually exhaust any malevolent force or greedy human that dared enter. As you imagine walking these passages, let the soundscape guide you. The distant drip of water continues, a metronome in the dark. Your own footsteps, if you could hear them, would be muffled by a fine layer of silt that has settled over millennia. There is a pressure in the air here, the weight of the pyramid above, a sensation of being buried alive, but peacefully, like a seed in soil. Now, pause in a small antechamber. The ceiling is low. By the flickering light of your imagined torch, you see the walls are not blank. Faint, ghostly traces of hieroglyphs and ritual scenes appear, painted in red and black ochre. A procession of offering bearers, symbols for life, stability, and dominion. The name of Amenemhat III, encircled in a cartouche. These are not the lavish, gilded reliefs of a triumphant king. They are functional, almost hurried inscriptions, the necessary magic to activate the space. They are whispers of ceremony in a place that has known only silence for centuries. This is the paradox of the labyrinth. It was built with immense effort to be forever empty. Its purpose was not to be visited, but to exist as a perfected, sealed machine. The rituals were performed, the spells were spoken, the doors were sealed, and then the human world was meant to retreat, leaving the pyramid to its solitary, eternal function, housing the king's Ka, his spiritual double, in a protected, eternal palace. Yet, as we navigate these silent, twisting passages, we are confronted with the builder's own humanity. Here, a mason's chisel slipped, leaving an uneven groove. There, a fingerprint is preserved in the dried mortar. In a dark corner, a soot mark from a worker's oil lamp. These tiny, accidental traces are more poignant than the grandest inscription. They remind us that this cosmic puzzle was built by hands that ached, by eyes that strained in the gloom, by men who likely wondered at the madness of digging such a complex only to hide it away forever. The temperature drops as we go deeper. The stone feels cold and damp to the touch. We are now below the water table, in the realm of the earth's own fluids. The walls here show patches of efflorescence, white, salt-like minerals blooming where groundwater has seeped through and evaporated. This moisture, this silent, creeping damp, was the pyramid's true enemy. It weakened mortar, rusted metal fittings, and promoted the slow, patient decay of everything it touched. And then, the corridor ends. It doesn't end in a chamber, but in a blank, finished wall. A dead end. Or is it? To the left, almost invisible in the shadow, is a narrow, vertical crack, the edge of a pivoting stone door, a massive portcullis that once swung shut with a final, thunderous boom. It is jammed now, slightly ajar, frozen in time. We squeeze through the gap, and we enter the labyrinth's core. Beyond the portcullis, the architecture shifts. The rough, functional passages give way to a space of unsettling precision. We are in an antechamber with a corbelled ceiling, each layer of stone projecting slightly over the one below, forming a primitive but powerful vault. The walls are smooth, dressed limestone. The floor is paved with slabs fitted so tightly that not even a grain of sand could slip between them. This is no longer merely a tunnel. It is a room built for ceremony, for transition. From here, the labyrinth reveals its true complexity. Instead of a single path forward, 3 separate corridors branch out. One descends sharply to the right. Another ascends in a tight spiral to the left. The third appears to be a straight, level passage leading into profound darkness. This is the crux of the design, confusion incarnate. Each corridor is identical in size and finish. Each bears the same ritual markings beside its entrance. There is no obvious sign, no arrow pointing to the king's chamber. To choose a path is to participate in a 4,000-year-old test. Modern archaeology tells us the straight passage eventually leads to a series of small, empty storerooms, perhaps for ritual offerings or the king's funerary equipment. The ascending spiral connects back to the upper reaches of the pyramid, a tortuous loop. But the descending corridor to the right, that is the path to the heart. It is the most concealed, the most challenging, the most intentional. Let us take it. The descent is steep, the ceiling so low we must crouch. The angle is deliberate, a physical act of humility, of bowing before entering the presence of the divine King, even in death. The air grows denser, colder. The sound of our breath becomes loud in the confined space, condensing into faint clouds in the chill. After 20 meters, the corridor terminates not in a door, but in a vertical shaft. A deep, square hole drops away into blackness. A rope or ladder would have been needed originally. Today, it is a void. This shaft is a masterpiece of psychological defense. It is an oubliette, a forgetting place. To descend into it is to commit fully. There is no easy return. It separates the determined from the casual, the worthy from the unworthy. At the bottom, another narrow, horizontal passage leads forward, but it is blocked by a second, massive granite portcullis, this one fully lowered and sealed for eternity. There is a gap at the top, just wide enough to slide through. We are now in the final approach. The passage beyond the portcullis is lined with niches that once held statues of the king as Osiris, guardian of the underworld. They are gone now, looted or crumbled to dust, leaving empty sockets that stare like blind eyes. The sense of being watched is palpable, though the watchers are absent. The walls here are inscribed with columns of hieroglyphs, not painted, but deeply carved. These are extracts from the pyramid texts and the newer coffin texts, spells to protect the king, to give him power over demons of the dark, to ensure his heart is not found wanting on the scales of judgment. O you who are coming, beware of the one who swallows millions. The sky is clear, the earth is firm, for the king who has gone to his horizon. May the doors of the sky be opened for him. May the doors of the earth be opened for him. The words are a shield, a whispered incantation that once filled this space with invisible power. To read them now, if we could, is to overhear a conversation between a king and his gods, a plea for safe passage into an unknown even he could not fully comprehend. The passage ends abruptly. There is no grand archway, no towering door. Instead, there is a simple, rectangular threshold, perhaps a meter high. One must crawl over it. This is the final barrier, the liminal space between the world of the living and the world of the eternal dead. To cross it is to leave one reality and enter another. We pause here, on the threshold. Let the soundscape deepen. The drip of water is gone. The hum of blood is gone. There is only a low-frequency pressure, a sub-audible vibration that might be the sound of the Earth's own slow spin, or the resonance of the stone under unimaginable weight. It is the sound of waiting. This labyrinth was not just a physical maze. It was a spiritual map. Its twists and turns mirrored the convoluted path through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, described in funerary texts. Each dead-end corridor represented a false path that could trap the unprepared soul. Each portcullis was a gate guarded by demons. The correct path was a ritual journey of purification, challenge, and eventual rebirth. The king's body, sealed in the chamber beyond this threshold, was the still point around which this entire cosmic machinery turned. But the profound irony hangs in the air, as tangible as the cold. This labyrinth, this masterpiece of protective complexity, was built on shifting ground. While the spells on the walls spoke of firm earth and clear sky, the very stones around us were silently, inexorably cracking. The labyrinth was meant to defy time, but its foundation was in a slow collapse. The magic was perfect. The engineering was fatally flawed. As we kneel before the final threshold, we are faced with the essence of Amenemhat III's endeavor, a breathtaking attempt to impose order on chaos, to use human intellect and will to create a pocket of perfect, eternal stability within a universe of entropy. The labyrinth is that attempt given form, beautiful, terrifying, and ultimately tragic. The king's chamber lies just ahead. But before we enter that most sacred and empty of spaces, let us linger here in the dark, feeling the weight of the ambition, the weight of the stone, and the heavier weight of the silence that followed when the last priest left. The last torch was extinguished, and the labyrinth was left to keep its own secrets. Cross the threshold. The space that opens before you is not large. It is intimate, oppressive, and profoundly sacred. This is the burial chamber, the Kararit, the innermost shrine of the Black Pyramid. The air here is utterly still, having been sealed for millennia. It tastes of stone and age, with a faint metallic hint of iron from the bedrock. The chamber is rectangular, its walls constructed of massive, beautifully fitted blocks of reddish-brown granite brought from the quarries at Aswan, over 800 kilometers to the south. This stone was chosen for its hardness, its durability, and perhaps its color, the hue of life-giving blood, of the rising sun, of the body of the earth god, Geb. The ceiling is a staggering achievement, a corbelled vault of the same granite, each multi-ton slab angled inward until they meet at a central ridge. It is a miniature, inverted mountain range, a stone sky under the earth. And in the center of the chamber rests the single, dominating object, the sarcophagus. It is carved from a single, enormous block of polished pink granite, so vast it seems to have grown from the floor itself. Its lid, also granite, lies beside it, pushed aside in some ancient, hurried moment. The sarcophagus is empty. This emptiness is the loudest thing in the room. It shouts across centuries. All the complexity, all the magic, all the labor, the labyrinth, the spells, the portcullises, the false doors, was for this, to protect this box. and the box is void. The king is not here. Why? The official story, whispered by the stones themselves, is one of prudent fear. Evidence suggests that as the pyramids settled and cracked, Amenemhat III, still alive, ordered a second, simpler tomb to be prepared at Harera, in the Fayum oasis. He likely abandoned this dark, sinking labyrinth for a safer, if less grandiose, eternity. His mummy has never been found. Perhaps it was destroyed. Perhaps it rests, undiscovered, elsewhere. But here, in the chamber built specifically for him, there is only absence. But let us not rush past the sarcophagus itself. Even empty, it is a profound artifact. Its exterior is smooth, unadorned by inscription or relief. This is unusual. Most royal sarcophagi are covered in hieroglyphs, eyes so the king can see, texts to guide him, images of gods. This one is stark, severe, pure in its form. It speaks of a different aesthetic, or perhaps a different fear. The fear that even words and images could be violated, could become portals for malevolent forces. Better a smooth, unbroken surface. A sealed vessel. Inside, the stone is rough-chiseled, unfinished. The craftsman never polished the interior, for it was never meant to be seen again. They left the marks of their tools, the final human touch on the king's eternal house. If you were to run your hand along the inside, an act of profound intrusion, you would feel the grooves, the chip marks, the gritty texture. It is strangely moving, this hidden, rough intimacy within the majestic, polished exterior. Now, look up. The granite ceiling is cracked. A long, jagged fissure runs from the central ridge down one wall. It is not the result of looters' dynamite or earthquake, it is a stress fracture from the pyramid's own settling. Through this crack, over thousands of years, fine, blonde desert sand has sifted. A small, graceful dune has formed in one corner of the chamber, a miniature Sahara intruding into this sealed universe. It is a perfect metaphor. The outside world, patient and relentless, always finds a way in. The desert is reclaiming its own. Stand in the center of the chamber. Feel the scale. It is not built for the living. The proportions are wrong. The ceiling feels too low, the walls too close. It is a space designed for a lying body, for a recumbent god-king, not for a standing, breathing human. To be here is to be an anomaly. The silence is total. It is a silence that has absorbed all sound, the chanting, the final rituals, the scrape of the granite lid being slid into place, the retreating footsteps. That silence now sits in the room like another piece of furniture, heavier than the sarcophagus. This is the end of the labyrinth. There are no more passages, no more choices. You have reached the center of the maze, and the prize is an emptiness that asks more questions than it answers. The labyrinth succeeded in one sense. It protected this chamber from major looting for a long time. But it failed in its primary purpose, to house the king for eternity. It became a monument to a plan abandoned, a perfect trap with no occupant. As we prepare to leave this inner sanctum, let the soundscape transform. The profound silence begins to soften, not with sound, but with a sense of release. The oppressive weight of the stone seems to lighten, as if the chamber itself is exhaling a breath held for 4,000 years. The faint, almost imagined scent of myrrh and natron, the spices of embalming, seems to linger for a second, then dissipates. We turn our back on the empty sarcophagus and begin the long, winding journey back. The labyrinth feels different now. Knowing its heart is empty changes its character. The false corridors seem less like threats and more like sad jokes. The portcullises seem less like guardians and more like stage props after the play has ended. The intricate spellwork on the walls feels like pages from a book whose main character never arrived. Yet, in its failure, the labyrinth gains a new, poetic meaning. It stands as a testament not to eternal glory, but to human concern. The sheer effort expended to protect a body reveals how deeply the Egyptians feared oblivion. The labyrinth is the architectural embodiment of that fear, and of the breathtaking creativity born from it. It is a scared child building an elaborate fort, a masterpiece of anxiety. We emerge finally into the sloping entrance corridor, and see, far above, a pinprick of daylight. It feels like being born. The cool, dry desert air washes over us, a shock after the damp, still air below. The sky, seen through the narrow entrance, is an impossibly brilliant blue. We have returned from the underworld. We have walked the path of the dead and come back. And we carry with us not treasure, not a mummy, but a story of a king who built a maze to cheat death, only to flee from his own creation. Welcome back to the silent heart of the matter. We stand once more at the granite threshold of the burial chamber, but our gaze now is not on the architecture, nor the labyrinth that led here. Our gaze is on the absence. The empty pink granite sarcophagus is not merely a vacant container. It is a throne with no king, an altar with no god, a question carved in stone that echoes through the corridors of history. Why did Amenemhat III abandon his own eternity? To understand this, we must leave the cool darkness of the chamber for a moment and travel in time, back to the bustling, sun-baked world of the 19th century BCE. Amenemhat III is at the height of his power. He rules a unified, prosperous Egypt. His name means Ammonius is at the forefront, and his reign is one of grand projects. Massive irrigation works in the Fayum oasis to tame the waters, temples adorned, trade flourishing. He is a king of earth and water, a bringer of fertility. His pyramid should have been his ultimate masterpiece, a testament in stone to a reign of stability. But the pyramid at Dashur was becoming a nightmare in slow motion. Imagine the scene. The king, now in the later years of his long reign, makes a royal visit to his tomb in progress. He descends the narrow, freshly cut passages, the walls still smelling of chiseled limestone. He reaches the burial chamber, this sanctum sanctorum. The granite walls are in place, the mighty sarcophagus sits waiting. And then, in the flickering lamplight, he sees it. a crack. A thin, hairline fracture snaking up from the floor, through the joint between two massive blocks, reaching towards the corbelled ceiling. Perhaps a trickle of dampness gleams along its length. Perhaps the air carries the faint, cold scent of groundwater where none should be. In that moment, the entire theological and political edifice of the pyramid trembles. A pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a resurrection machine. Its perfect geometry, its alignment with the stars, its sealed, protected interior, all were designed to create a permanent, incorruptible environment for the king's Ka and his mummified body. The body was the anchor. If the tomb was flawed, if it could let in water, if it could collapse, then the king's entire journey to the afterlife was jeopardized. The crack in the wall was not just a structural fault, it was a crack in his pathway to immortality. What thoughts raced through the mind of the living God? Disbelief? Rage at his architects? A cold, creeping dread? The ancient Egyptians had a deep-seated fear of the second death, the permanent destruction of the soul that could occur if the body was destroyed or the tomb violated. This fear was the engine behind mummification, behind tomb curses, behind labyrinths. And here, in his own impossibly expensive, ingeniously designed tomb, the threat was coming not from tomb robbers, but from the very earth it was built upon. The evidence suggests a decision was made, likely in haste. Construction in the crumbling upper chambers may have been halted. Focus shifted to the lower, bedrock-cut suite, but the fundamental problem persisted. The ground was sinking. The structure was moving. The king's eternal house was being built on sand in the most literal, metaphorical sense. And so, Amenemhat III made a staggering, pragmatic, and profoundly human choice. He walked away. He ordered a new tomb to be built at Hawara, near his beloved Fayum projects. This new tomb, while still grand, would be different. Perhaps built with less ambitious height, with different materials, on more stable ground. The Black Pyramid, this dark, brooding titan of Dashur, was relegated to a decoy, a false front, a cenotaph, a memorial without a body. But the empty sarcophagus here tells a deeper story than mere relocation. It speaks of ritual abandonment. The Egyptians were meticulous about ceremony. It is possible that even though the king's body would not rest here, some form of symbolic burial rite was performed. The sarcophagus may have been ritually closed on emptiness. Offerings may have been made to an absent king. The labyrinth was activated by spells and priests, then sealed, left to protect nothing. A ghost king in a ghost tomb. As we contemplate this, let the soundscape embody the paradox. The echo in the chamber is not empty, it is full of abandoned intention. It carries the ghost of prayers spoken for a presence that never came. The rustle is the sound of time settling into a space meant to defy it. There is a profound sadness here, but not a tragic one. It is the sadness of a plan unrealized, a song cut off before the final note. Now, step closer to the sarcophagus. Run your gaze over the smooth, rose-colored granite. Without a lid, it is an open mouth, a silent scream. The interior, rough and unfinished, feels like a wound. This box was meant to be the universe in miniature for the king, a womb of stone for his rebirth. Instead, it became a monument to his doubt. The emptiness is not passive. It is active. It asks us questions. Is a tomb still a tomb if no one is buried there? Does the magic of the spells on the walls still linger, waiting for a king who will never come? What is more powerful, the presence of a god-king, or the haunting absence he left behind? In Egyptian cosmology, a name and a memory had power. By inscribing his name throughout this complex, Amenemhat III ensured his Ka could still find sustenance here, even if his body was elsewhere. The empty throne, then, is not entirely empty. It is occupied by his name, by his intention, by his fear. It is a throne for a ghost. As we stand in this chamber, we are not just in a physical space. We are standing at the crossroads of ambition and reality, of divine aspiration and earthly limitation. The Black Pyramid is the stone embodiment of that moment of collision, and its silent granite heart holds the echo of the collision sound. Let us now circle the empty sarcophagus, not as archaeologists, but as witnesses to a psychological drama etched in stone. The chamber, in its stark grandeur, functions as a mirror to the king's inner state. Consider the materials, the hard, unyielding granite from the far south. It speaks of permanence, of a desire for something that could withstand the eons. Yet, this permanence was placed upon soft, shifting clay. The very choice of material shouts a king's hope, while its cracked foundation whispers nature's indifference. Look at the floor around the sarcophagus. It is not level. Over millennia, the chamber has tilted slightly, a fact felt more in the body than seen by the eye. The sarcophagus itself sits a little askew, no longer perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions as intended. This subtle list is the pyramid's final, quiet confession. Even here, in the most sacred, most protected cube of space in the entire complex, the ground has moved. The earth has rejected the imposed order. Now, direct your attention upward, to the grand, corbelled ceiling. It is a masterpiece of stone engineering, each multi-ton slab leaning on its neighbor, distributing the impossible weight of the pyramid above. But follow the line of the central ridge. See the crack, not a clean split, but a jagged, meandering fissure, like a lightning bolt frozen in stone. Through it, as noted, sand has seeped. But see also the darker stains along its edges, mineral deposits left by seeping groundwater. This is not a dry tomb. It is a tomb that, in its deepest heart, weeps. This moisture is the ultimate betrayer. The Egyptians went to incredible lengths to create dry, sealed environments for mummification. Humidity was the enemy of preservation. The presence of water in this chamber meant it was fundamentally unfit for its purpose. It would have promoted the decay of any organic material, linen bandages, wooden shrines, the king's own body. The priests and engineers would have known this. The king, upon seeing that damp stain, would have known his eternity here was doomed. Imagine the final ritual, if it even took place. A small group of high priests in leopard skins, their voices low in the confined space. Incense smoke, thick and sweet, trying to mask the scent of damp stone. They perform the opening of the mouth ceremony not on a mummy, but on an empty sarcophagus, animating a vessel for a spirit that must now reside elsewhere. The words of the liturgy bounce off the granite, hollow and ironic. Your mouth is open for you, your mouth is split open for you. You are purified with natron, together with the followers of Horus. But there is no body to purify, no mouth to open. The rituals were powerful magic, but they required an anchor. Here, the anchor was gone. The magic dissipates into the damp air, absorbed by the stone, leaving only a memory of performance. Then, the retreat. The priests back out of the chamber, perhaps casting uneasy glances at the growing crack. They navigate the labyrinth in reverse, their torches casting long, dancing shadows that now seem mocking. They seal the portcullises for the last time. The grinding sound of stone on stone echoes through the passages, a series of final, definitive thuds. Boom, boom, boom. At the entrance, they emerge into the blinding sun. The desert wind, hot and dry, slaps their faces, a stark contrast to the chill, damp silence they've left behind. They perform the final external rites at the mortuary temple. Offerings are set, fires are lit, prayers are recited to a king who is, spiritually, already somewhere else. And then, they too leave. The workforce is disbanded. The quarrying stops. The once bustling necropolis of Dashur falls into a slow silence, punctuated only by the wind and the skittering of sand across the causeway. The Black Pyramid is now a closed book. But it is a book with a blank page at its center. Centuries pass. The casing stones are stolen for other projects, revealing the dark, mud brick core. The pyramid takes on its characteristic, black, appearance. It becomes a landmark for travelers, a curiosity. It is plundered, of course. The smaller artifacts, the portable magic, are stripped away. But the great granite sarcophagus is too heavy, too entrenched. Looters peer into its empty interior, curse their luck, and move on. The emptiness that disappointed the king now disappoints the thief. The sarcophagus's void becomes its best protection. In the modern era, archaeologists like Jacques de Morgan clear the sand and debris, map the labyrinth, and stare into the same emptiness. They piece together the story from the cracks, from the architectural changes, from the absence. They confirm what the stones have whispered all along. This was a tomb abandoned by its own maker. This narrative transforms the chamber from a tragic failure into something more complex, a monument to contingency. It reminds us that history is not just the story of what happened, but of what almost happened. Amenemhat III's legacy was almost anchored here, in this dark, sinking mountain. His name was almost spoken for eternity in these damp corridors. Instead, his legacy shifted to Hera, to his hydraulic projects, to a different kind of immortality tied to water and fertility rather than stone and stars. The empty throne, therefore, is not a symbol of negation. It is a symbol of choice. In the face of a flawed eternity, the king chose a different path. He prioritized the survival of his soul over the grandeur of his monument. There is a humility in that, a pragmatism that cuts through the usual narrative of pharaonic hubris. It is a deeply human moment preserved in stone, the moment a god-king admitted, if only to himself, that his first plan wouldn't work. As you stand in this chamber now, let the soundscape reflect this nuanced truth. The hollow echo softens, losing its sharp edge. It blends with the faint, almost subliminal sigh of the settling earth, a sound of acceptance, not collapse. The drip of water becomes not a portent of doom, but a natural rhythm, the earth's own pulse continuing heedless of the stone box within it. We are not in a place of defeat. We are in a place of adaptation. The pyramid tried to be one thing and became another. The king sought one kind of eternity and had to settle for another. This chamber is the fulcrum of that transformation. It is quiet, yes. It is empty, yes. But it is not devoid of meaning. It is saturated with the meaning of change. We have sat with the absence. We have heard the echo of choices made 4,000 years ago. Now, as we prepare to leave this granite chamber, we must perform one final act, to reconsecrate the emptiness. To understand that this void is not a failure of purpose, but a transformation of it. Look once more at the sarcophagus. See not just a hollow box, but a vessel of potential. In Egyptian thought, the sarcophagus, Neb-Ankh, was the lord of life. It was a womb. Its emptiness can be seen not as barren, but as pregnantly waiting for a king who transcended the need for a single, stationary body. Perhaps, in his decision to depart, Amenemhat III achieved a different kind of liberation. His spirit was no longer bound to one precarious stone chamber, but could roam between his monuments, his lands, his legacy in the Fayum, and the memory held in his names carved throughout the kingdom. The chamber itself, with its cracked ceiling and tilted floor, becomes a classroom. Its lesson is on the dialogue between human ambition and natural law. The builders believed they could outwit geology with grandeur. The earth responded with patient, undeniable physics. The resulting compromise, this beautiful, flawed, abandoned space, is more instructive than a perfect, sealed tomb could ever be. It teaches resilience, adaptability, and the humility to change course. Now, walk slowly around the chamber one last time. Touch the walls in your mind. The granite is cold, but its polish still holds the ghost of warm hands, the masons, the polishers, the priests. Their energy is imprinted here, not in the form of a king's body, but in the care of their craft. This is a monument to labor as much as to royalty. The empty throne is, in a way, a tribute to the thousands who built it, for their work remains, enduring and eloquent, long after the intended occupant fled. Turn to the doorway, the low, rectangular threshold we crawled over to enter. It frames a view back into the dark labyrinth. That maze now seems less a trap and more a processional path that leads to this serene, if somber, conclusion. Each false turn, each dead end, was a step in a ritual journey that culminates not in a body, but in an idea, the idea of a king who was wise enough to know when to leave. As we cross back over the threshold, we re-enter the labyrinth. But our relationship to it has changed. We are not intruders or bewildered spirits. We are witnesses who have understood its secret. The passages feel less confining. The silence feels less oppressive. We move with a sense of reverence for the intention that shaped this place, even if that intention was ultimately redirected. The journey out feels quicker, lighter. The portcullises stand like silent sentinels, acknowledging our passage. The hieroglyphs on the walls seem to glow with a softer light. Their protective magic now feels like a blessing for us, the living visitors, rather than a ward for a departed king. The spells wish us safe passage back to the world of light. And then, the climb. The steep, narrow corridor leading up. Ahead, the pinpoint of daylight grows, a brilliant white star in the profound black. We move toward it, drawn by the warmth, the air, the open sky. With each step, the weight of the stone above lessens. The scent of the desert, dry, clean, vast, reaches down to greet us. We emerge. The sunlight is shocking, glorious. The wind wraps around us, carrying away the last whispers of the subterranean silence. We stand at the base of the Black Pyramid, its dark mass rising beside us. But we see it differently now. It is no longer a brooding mystery or a tragic failure. It is a sage, a weathered, stoic teacher sitting in the desert, offering lessons in impermanence, adaptation, and the quiet dignity of a plan altered. We look up at its ruined apex, silhouetted against the deep blue sky. It is not reaching for the heavens with geometric perfection. It is conversing with them, a broken, honest dialogue between earth and sky, between human endeavor and cosmic time. The missing capstone is not an absence, it is an opening, a vulnerability that lets the sky in. As the wind rustles the sand at our feet, we realize we have not solved the pyramid's mystery. We have joined it. We have added our quiet contemplation to the millennia of thoughts absorbed by its stones. The empty throne is no longer empty. It is filled with our understanding, our empathy, our momentary sharing of a 4,000-year-old moment of doubt and decision. This is the gift of the Black Pyramid. It does not overwhelm us with perfection, but invites us into its story. A story with a missing main character, a flawed structure, and an ending that is not an end, but a lingering, beautiful question. We turn our back on the pyramid and begin to walk across the sand, back toward the realm of the living. The vast desert opens before us, under an infinite sky. We carry with us the cool memory of the granite chamber, the echo of the empty sarcophagus, and a profound sense of peace. The king may have left his throne, but in doing so, he left us something far more valuable, a space to contemplate our own impermanence, our own choices, and the gentle, forgiving nature of time itself. Welcome to the anatomy of a silent collapse. We have explored the human heart of the Black Pyramid, its ambitions, its fears, its empty throne. Now, we turn to its physical heart, the earth upon which it stands. This chapter is not about kings or magic. It is about mud, weight, and time. It is the story of a battle between geometry and geology, where geology won with the patient, inexorable force of a sinking sun. Our story begins not in the age of Amenemhat III, but in the deep past, long before the first brick was molded. The Dashur Plateau, overlooking the Nile's western bank, seems solid, eternal. But beneath its tawny sand lies a secret, a thick, viscous layer of smectitic clay. This clay is a shapeshifter. Dry, it is hard and stable. But introduce water, from the Nile's annual flood, from underground aquifers, from rare desert rains, and it transforms. It becomes plastic, lubricated, a slow-moving slurry. It loses its bearing capacity. It flows. The ancient Egyptian engineers were masters of their craft. They could align a pyramid to true north within a fraction of a degree. They could quarry, transport, and lift stones weighing hundreds of tons. They understood the sun, the stars, and the floods. But their understanding of subsurface geology was, by modern standards, nascent. When they surveyed Dashur, they likely tested the surface sand, found it firm, and began to dig. They may have hit the clay, felt its odd consistency, but perhaps dismissed it as just another layer of earth to be built upon. Or perhaps, under pressure from a living king's timeline, they chose to ignore the warning signs. The pyramid's foundation is not a solid rock base. It is a compromise. Archaeologists and geotechnical engineers who have studied the site believe the builders tried to stabilize the ground. They may have dug pits, filled them with sand and gravel to act as drains and load spreaders. They might have laid down layers of compacted desert clay and limestone chips to create a stable platform. It was a brilliant attempt, a Bronze Age geotechnical solution. But it was ultimately like building a castle on a pillow. Construction began. Millions of mud bricks were made from the very Nile clay that would betray the structure. Local limestone blocks were quarried and set. The pyramid began to rise, course by course, its weight increasing exponentially. And with each new layer, the clay beneath began to compress, to deform, to squeeze out laterally. The pyramid did not simply settle, it began to sink unevenly. Imagine the moment the first crack appeared. Not in the finished stone, but in the foundation trench. A supervisor, inspecting the perfectly level base, sees a hairline fracture in the packed earth platform. He calls the chief architect. They peer at it, debate. Is it just the drying sun? They order more gravel packed into the fissure. Work continues. The weight increases. The crack reappears, wider now. A silent alarm begins to ring in the minds of those in charge. But to stop a pharaoh's pyramid? Unthinkable. The design itself may have been altered in response. The original angle might have been made shallower to reduce stress, though the Black Pyramid still has a relatively steep incline. The interior chambers, the labyrinth, were shifted, their walls reinforced with rare cedarwood beams imported from Lebanon. These beams were not just for ritual purity, they were structural band-aids, meant to hold cracking stone together. We can read the anxiety in these changes. The pyramid's blueprint, a document of perfect celestial order, was being scribbled over with frantic, earthly corrections. As you absorb this, let the soundscape deepen. The subsonic rumble grows slightly, not threateningly, but presencefully. It is the sound of the clay bed adjusting, molecule by molecule, under an ever-growing burden. The trickle of sand becomes a soft, continuous hiss, the sound of the desert reclaiming its equilibrium, grain by stolen grain. Now, mentally fast forward through the construction period. The pyramid is complete, or nearly so. Its white casing stones gleam. But inside, behind that perfect skin, the core is groaning. The clay has not stopped moving. It is a slow, viscous river flowing in ultra-slow motion. The pyramid, rather than being an immovable mountain, is more like a great stone ship, slowly foundering in a sea of mud. This is the central tragic irony. The very material that gave life to Egypt, the Nile silt that fertilized its fields, became the agent of a pharaoh's monumental despair. The Black Pyramid is a monument built from the essence of rebirth, the fertile clay, that ultimately led to its own entropic decay. It is a poem about the duality of the Nile, giver of life, taker of dreams. We stand today not before a ruin caused by invaders or earthquakes, but before a ruin caused by misplaced trust. The Egyptians trusted the earth to hold their heaven-reaching mountains. The earth, indifferent and bound by its own laws, simply did what it always does. It yielded. But there is no malice here. This is not a morality tale of hubris punished. It is a physical equation, played out over millennia. Weight versus sheer strength. Load versus bearing capacity. It is science written in broken stone, a textbook of geotechnical failure laid open under the desert sun. As we prepare to delve deeper into the specifics of this sinking, hold this image: the pyramid as a living entity, engaged in a millennia-long sigh. It is not dead. It is settling. And in its slow descent, it tells a truth more profound than any perfect, static monument could, that all things, even mountains of stone, are in conversation with the ground beneath them. Let us now descend from the realm of metaphor into the granular details of the collapse. Imagine we have the eyes of a modern geotechnical engineer, armed with ground-penetrating radar and core samples. What would we see beneath the Black Pyramid? First, we'd map the clay layer. It is not uniform. It has pockets of higher plasticity, lenses of sand, seams of groundwater. The pyramid's immense weight, estimated at over 1,000,000 tons, acted not as a uniform press, but as a concentrated load. The clay responded according to its inconsistencies. The southwest corner of the pyramid, where the clay was perhaps wetter or softer, sank more than the northeast corner. This differential settlement is the archenemy of all heavy construction. The result, the pyramid began to tilt and warp. Its perfect square base deformed into a subtle parallelogram. Its corners, meant to be sharp right angles, splayed. The stress from this twisting motion traveled up through the masonry, seeking the path of least resistance. It found them in the weak points, the mortar joints between mud bricks, the interfaces between the rough core masonry and the finer casing stones. Now, visualize the internal damage. The labyrinthine corridors, aligned with precise ritual intent, were suddenly subject to forces their designers never anticipated. Walls that were meant to be parallel began to converge or diverge. Ceilings developed tensile cracks on their underside as the walls they rested on moved outward. The grand, corbelled granite ceiling of the burial chamber? That crack we saw is a classic tension crack, caused when the walls supporting it tried to bow outward under the uneven settling of the foundation. It is a forensic signature, a scream frozen in stone that says, "The ground beneath me is moving." The builder's attempts to compensate are visible to the trained eye. In some passages, you can see where a new, thicker course of bricks was added to a wall to buttress it. In others, there are repair patches of a different mortar, a slightly different color, applied after the initial damage occurred. They were fighting a battle they could not see, against an enemy that gave no quarter. Each repair was a temporary victory in a war they were destined to lose. Now, consider the casing stones. The pyramid was intended to be sheathed in smooth, white Tura limestone, fitted so precisely a razor blade couldn't slip between them. But as the core behind them deformed, these perfectly fitted stones lost their support. Their delicate equilibrium was shattered. They began to bulge, to rotate, to slide. Once the first one loosened, it was only a matter of time before the entire skin was vulnerable. Later generations, from the Romans to medieval Cairo builders, would prize this pre-cut, high-quality limestone. They would not even need to quarry it. They could simply pry it loose from the faltering structure. The pyramid was literally skinned alive by time and utility, its dark core exposed like a wound. This exposure accelerated the decay. The mud brick core, now unprotected from rare desert rains, began to erode. Wind-driven sand acted like sandpaper, scouring the softer bricks. The once sharp edges of the pyramid's tiers softened, melted into slopes of debris. The pyramid began to look less like a built object and more like a natural butte, a geological formation shaped by wind and rain. Yet, the most profound process is invisible. It is the continued sinking. Studies suggest the pyramid is still moving, imperceptibly, at a rate of perhaps a millimeter per decade. It is not a ruin frozen in time, It is a ruin in slow motion. The clay is still adjusting. The stones are still seeking a final, stable position. The giant is not dead. It is resting, forever finding a more comfortable pose in its bed of soft earth. As we contemplate this ongoing process, let the soundscape evolve. The deep rumble of subsidence is joined by a new sound, the faint, high-pitched creak of stone against stone, a sound so slow and infrequent it might happen only once a century. It is the sound of a single brick, under millennia of pressure, finally microfracturing and settling 0.5 millimeter into its new, permanent home. Then, the soft shush of a tiny avalanche of internal debris filling the newly created void. This is the pyramid's metabolism, an impossibly slow digestion of its own stress. It is a process of accommodation, of the structure gradually coming to terms with the reality of its foundation. There is a strange peace in this. The frantic human attempts to correct, to resist, have ended. Now, only nature's patient negotiation remains. What does this mean for our understanding of the pyramid? It transforms it from a static artifact into a dynamic entity. We are not looking at a photograph, but at a single frame pulled from a film that is still rolling. The Black Pyramid is not an object, but an event that began with a pharaoh's order and continues today, in the silent, shifting dark beneath the sand. This perspective dissolves the line between monument and landscape. The pyramid is becoming part of the desert, not as an intrusion, but as a new feature slowly being assimilated. The sand blowing against its sides is not attacking it, it is embracing it, grain by grain, smoothing its edges, blending it into the dunes. The cracks are not wounds, they are openings for the desert to enter, to fill the hollow spaces with its essence. In this light, the pyramid's failure as a stable tomb is its success as a geological collaborator. It has entered into a partnership with the earth, a slow dance of settlement and erosion that will continue for hundreds of thousands of years, until perhaps one day it is just a gentle mound, a slight anomaly in the sand that a future geologist might puzzle over. We, standing here now, are witnesses to the middle chapters of this epic. We see the human design still legible, but we also see the natural forces diligently editing the text. It is a privilege to see this dialogue, this moment where the ambition of a king is still visible, but the patient hand of geology is clearly writing the final draft. We have seen the science, felt the slow-motion catastrophe. Now, we must integrate this knowledge with the human story. The sinking was not just a physical process, it was a psychological earthquake for Amenemhat III and his civilization. Let us stand at the intersection of geology and belief, where a crack in the stone was also a crack in the cosmos. For the ancient Egyptians, the universe was founded on Mot, divine order, balance, truth. The king was the guarantor of Mot on earth. His pyramid, a perfect geometric mountain aligned with the stars, was a physical manifestation of that cosmic order. Its stability mirrored the stability of the kingdom, the cyclical reliability of the Nile flood, the unwavering path of the sun. So what did it mean when the pyramid, this anchor of Mot, began to crack and sink? It would have been interpreted as a cosmic warning. A fissure in the burial chamber was not just an engineering flaw, it was a fissure in the king's covenant with the gods. Priests would have scanned the heavens for portents. They would have scrutinized the Nile's flood levels, the behavior of animals, their own dreams. The sinking pyramid was an O written in stone, a message from the earth itself that something was out of balance. Perhaps, in the privacy of his palace, Amenemhat III felt a chilling doubt. Had he offended Ra? Osiris? Had the rituals been performed incorrectly? Was his heart not as true as the priests declared? The pyramid's failure could have been internalized as a personal failing, a sign that his divine essence was somehow flawed, unable to sustain the perfect vessel built for it. This psychological pressure may explain the frantic architectural corrections, the doubling of the burial suites, as if two chances were better than one, and ultimately the decision to abandon the project. It was not merely a practical relocation, it may have been a spiritual retreat. By leaving the sinking pyramid, the king was perhaps attempting to leave behind the bad omen, to sever his connection to a place where Mot was visibly crumbling. Yet, there is another, more profound way to view this. What if the pyramid's interaction with the unstable earth was not a violation of Mot, but a deeper expression of it? Mot was not sterile perfection. It was a dynamic balance that included chaos, Isfet, as its necessary counterpart. The Nile's flood was chaotic destruction that brought fertile life. The sun died each night in chaos to be reborn at dawn. In this light, the Black Pyramid's sinking could be seen as its participation in a larger, natural order. It was not defying Mot, it was engaging with the chaotic, yielding, feminine principle of the earth, the goddess Geb. The pyramid, a masculine symbol of solar ascent and rigid order, was being embraced, absorbed, and transformed by the earth. Their union was not graceful. It was a slow, tectonic marriage, full of stress and fracture, but a union nonetheless. This transforms the pyramid from a failed monument into a sacred site of integration. It becomes a place where the Egyptian ideals of eternal order confronted the messy, physical reality of the world, and a new, more complex truth emerged. A truth that acknowledges that even the mightiest human order must eventually yield to, and become part of, the gentle, relentless patience of nature. Look at the pyramid now with this vision. Its dark, crumbling form is not a symbol of defeat, but of dialogue. The cracks are not failures. They are conversations between limestone and clay. The tilting apex is not a mistake, it is a bow to the forces that truly govern the long-term fate of all things. The sand filling its wounds is not an invasion, it is a balm, the desert healing the scar left by human ambition. The Black Pyramid thus achieves a meaning its builders never intended. It becomes a teacher of humility and integration. It teaches that our greatest monuments are not separate from nature, but are temporary patterns within it, destined to be revised, softened, and reclaimed. It teaches that endurance is not about resisting change, but about adapting with grace to the changes that are inevitable. As the sun begins to set, casting long, deep blue shadows from the pyramid across the sand, we feel this lesson settle into our bones. The scientific narrative of subsidence and the human narrative of fear and ambition merge into a single, peaceful understanding. The giant is sinking, yes, but it is sinking home. It is returning to the embrace of the earth from which its very bricks were formed. We can now walk away from the pyramid not with pity, but with respect. It has accomplished something more rare than perfect preservation. It has told a true story. A story of ambition, error, fear, adaptation, and ultimately, a slow, peaceful reunion with the ground of being. As we take our final look, the pyramid is silhouetted against a twilight sky streaked with orange and purple. It looks solid, eternal, and yet we know it is fluid, changing. This is its final gift, the ability to hold two contradictory truths at once. To be both a mountain and a mirage, a tomb and a womb, a failure and a profound success. Welcome to the final vigil. We have journeyed through the ambition, the labyrinth, the emptiness, and the slow descent. Now, we arrive at the quietest chapter, the watch. We stand back, far enough to see the Black Pyramid not as a structure to be analyzed, but as a presence in the landscape, a silent guard that has kept its post for nearly 4,000 years. The sun has long set. The brutal heat of the day has bled away into the sand, radiating back into a sky now dusted with stars. The air is cool, crisp, carrying the faint, clean scent of dew forming on rare patches of desert grass. The pyramid is no longer a distinct shape of light and shadow. It has become a hole in the starfield, a deeper darkness that eats the Milky Way's glow. It is less an object and more an absence, an architectural black hole. Yet, in this darkness, it is more alive than ever. For this is when the pyramid truly becomes what it was always meant to be, a cosmic marker. Its ruined edges are softened by starlight. Its mass feels gravitational, pulling not just at the earth below, but at the gaze above. The ancient Egyptians believed the souls of kings became stars in the northern sky, the imperishable ones. While Amenemhat III's body may have fled, perhaps his name, his Ren, lingers here in this dark stone, in silent communion with those celestial ancestors. Walk slowly around its base in the moonlight. Your footsteps are silent in the soft sand. Touch the stones, they are cold now, having released the day's stored heat. That cold is not the chill of death, but the coolness of deep time. These stones remember the warmth of the hands that laid them, the heat of the sun that has beat upon them for centuries, and now they rest, cooling in the cosmic night, patient as the bedrock itself. Look up. The pyramid's silhouette is jagged against the stars. That broken apex, the failed reaching toward heaven, now serves a different purpose. It is a frame for the cosmos. Stars rise and set within its irregular outline. Planets trace their slow arcs just above its shoulders. It is an observatory in reverse. Instead of looking out from within, the universe looks in upon it, filling its broken crown with celestial fire. This is the pyramid's most profound transformation, from a tomb meant to house one king to a temple for all of time. Its doors are sealed, its chambers empty, its corridors still. It has nothing left to protect but the silence itself. And in that silence, it offers a space for contemplation that no intact, bustling monument ever could. The wind picks up slightly, a gentle breeze that flows around the massive stones. It makes a low, humming sound, the pyramid's breath. It is not the sound of air moving randomly, but of air being shaped, channeled, given voice by the structure. This hum is the pyramid's only remaining song, a single, sustained note in the key of eternity. As you listen, let your own breath fall into rhythm with it. Inhale the cool desert air. Exhale slowly. With each cycle, feel the scale of your own life, the brief, warm flicker of consciousness against the cold, long endurance of the stone. There is no competition here, only relationship. Your fleeting awareness meeting its ancient stillness. The encounter is peaceful, humbling, and strangely comforting. For the pyramid guards not just secrets, but also perspective. In its presence, our daily worries, our personal ambitions, our fears of insignificance are gently placed into a larger frame. This stone has seen empires rise and fall, languages born and forgotten, climates change, and the Nile shift its course. It will likely see the rise and fall of many more human dramas before it finally surrenders completely to the sand. And yet, it was built by people. People who hoped, feared, loved, and died. This is the final reconciliation the silent guard offers, the marriage of the ephemeral and the eternal. The human moment that created it is gone, but the intention, the labor, the stone itself, persists. We are looking at the longest possible echo of a human thought. As the night deepens, a sense of profound acceptance settles over the desert. The pyramid accepts its fate. The sand accepts the pyramid. The stars accept their silent sentinel below. And we, visitors in this timeless dialogue, are invited to accept our own place in this vast, beautiful, indifferent, and yet intimately connected universe. We are not separate from the monument. We are part of the same continuum, the latest witnesses in a line of witnesses that stretches back to the priests who sealed the doors, the laborers who laid the bricks, the king who dreamed this dark mountain into being. Our watching is now part of its story. The silent guard stands. It does not judge, does not speak, does not move. It simply is. And in its sheer, stubborn being, it offers a lesson in existence itself, that to endure is not to resist change, but to incorporate it, to become a record of all that has happened to you. A testament written in cracks and shadows and starlight. Time stretches in the desert night. What feels like an hour might be minutes. A minute might feel like eternity. The pyramid's presence begins to work on you not as an object to observe, but as a field of consciousness to inhabit. Let your awareness expand, not upward toward the stars, but downward, into the earth the pyramid guards. Beneath your feet, the labyrinth sleeps. The empty sarcophagus rests in its tilted chamber. The cracks hold their breath. The entire intricate, troubled, beautiful machine of stone is at rest. It is not dead. It is in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a dawn that will not come for its intended purpose, but comes nonetheless, day after day, in a cycle of light that has become meaningless to its interior darkness. This is the guard's true duty, to hold the memory of intention. Every stone in the labyrinth, every turn in the passage, every hieroglyph on the wall, was placed with deliberate purpose. That purpose failed in its literal sense, but it succeeded in creating this resonant form. The pyramid now holds the echo of that ancient will, just as a seashell holds the echo of the ocean. If you are still enough, you might feel it, not as a thought, but as a vibration in the air, a tingling on the skin, the faintest magnetic pull toward the center of the maze. This is the pyramid's ghost, not the ghost of Amenemhat III, but the ghost of human striving. The ghost of the desire to carve order from chaos, to make a mark that defies time, to speak to gods and future generations. That ghost is what stands guard. It is what gives the ruin its power, its melancholy beauty, its strange comfort. Now, shift your gaze from the pyramid to the landscape it commands. The desert stretches in every direction, a sea of shadows under the Milky Way. The Nile, a thin, dark ribbon of life, glistens under starlight to the east. The pyramid sits exactly at the boundary, the liminal space between the fertile black land, Kemet, and the deadly red desert, Dashur. It is a sentinel on the border of life and death, order and chaos, the known and the unknowable. This positioning was not accidental. In choosing Dashur, Amenemhat III placed his tomb at the frontier. His pyramid was to be a fortress of Mot against the encroaching Isfet of the desert. Even in its failure, it holds that line. Its very brokenness stands as a testament to the cost of that eternal battle. It shows that the frontier is not a clean line, but a zone of interaction, of erosion, of slow negotiation. The desert is winning, grain by grain, but the pyramid still defines the terms of the surrender. As you contemplate this, a satellite, a tiny, moving star, traces a smooth arc directly over the pyramid's apex. A modern artifact crossing an ancient sight line. For a moment, two eras touch, the age of stone and the age of silicon. Both are attempts to reach beyond our mortal limits, to communicate across vast distances, to impose a human pattern on the cosmos. The pyramid is our first satellite, a stone message launched into the future, now falling back to Earth in slow motion. The wind shifts, carrying from the north the faint, lonely call of a desert fox. The sound is brief, sharp, alive. It is a reminder that this silent landscape is not empty. Life persists in the cracks, under the rocks, in the rare pockets of moisture. The pyramid, for all its grandeur, is just another part of this ecosystem of endurance. Insects crawl in its shadows. Lizards bask on its sun-warmed stones by day. Birds nest in its crevices. It has been absorbed into the food web, the water cycle, the slow biological pulse of the desert. This is the final layer of the guard's duty, ecological integration. The pyramid is no longer separate from nature. It is a habitat. Its cracks are homes. Its lee side provides shelter from storms. Its mass creates a microclimate. It has become a part of the living desert, a provider of niche and shade in the relentless sun. In guarding its secrets, it also guards life. Let your awareness soften further. Release the need to understand, to analyze, to interpret. Simply be present with the silent guard. Feel the cool air on your face. Smell the dry, mineral scent of the desert. See the impossible abundance of stars. Hear the vast, humming quiet. In this state, a realization dawns. You are not looking at the guard. You are standing with it. You have joined the watch. Your consciousness, for this brief night, has become part of the sentinel's awareness. You are helping to hold the memory, to honor the striving, to witness the slow return to dust. This is the pyramid's ultimate gift, an invitation to participate in deep time, to step out of the frantic, short-term stream of human concerns and stand in a current that moves in millennia, to feel your own smallness not as a diminishment, but as a relief. You are free from the burden of permanence. Your task is not to build a mountain, but to be a conscious witness to the beauty of the mountain's long goodbye. The pyramid's silence becomes a medium of connection. Through it, you are connected to the ancient builders, to the anxious king, to all the travelers and looters and archaeologists who have stood here before you. You are connected to the desert, to the Nile, to the stars wheeling overhead. The guard does not separate, it links. It is a stone nexus in the web of time and space. As the night reaches its deepest point, the pyramid seems to dissolve into the darkness. Its edges blur. It becomes one with the night, a concentration of shadow. It is almost invisible, and yet its presence is stronger than ever. You feel it not with your eyes, but with your whole being, a gravitational pull on the soul, a calm, steady pressure in the chest, a sense of being in the presence of something immensely patient and wise. This is the heart of the vigil, when the form disappears and the essence remains. The idea of the pyramid, the intention, the guard. It is no longer a pile of stones, it is a condition of the landscape, a permanent feature of the mind. A change begins in the east. Not a sound, but a softening of the darkness. The deepest black of night yields to a shade of indigo so profound it feels like velvet. The stars there begin to fade, not all at once, but one by one, as if being gently blown out by a breath you cannot feel. The silent guard is preparing for the shift. Its watch of the night sky is ending. Soon it will begin its day watch, a different vigil under the blazing sun. But in this liminal hour, the twilight of the gods, it performs its most sacred function. It holds the balance between night and day, between the realm of stars and the realm of light. Watch the pyramid's western face. For a few precious minutes, it will be the last thing in the desert to hold the night. The advancing dawn will touch the tips of the dunes, the blades of dry grass, the distant palms along the Nile. But the pyramid's vast bulk will remain a pool of shadow, a keeper of the dark, even as the world brightens around it. This is its final lesson, the grace of relinquishment. It does not cling to the night. It does not fight the dawn. It simply holds the darkness until the last possible moment, then lets it go with dignity. The crack by which sand entered the burial chamber? That same crack will soon be lit by a razor-thin line of gold. The flaw becomes a vessel for light. Now, the first direct ray of sunlight, not yet the sun itself, but its herald, strikes the very tip of the pyramid's ruined apex. A pinprick of fire appears on the dark stone. It is a ritual ignition. The pyramid is being lit from within, not by torches, but by the sun itself. This daily occurrence is the true opening of the mouth ceremony, performed not by priests, but by the cosmos. The pyramid, in that moment, is animated. It breathes in the dawn. The light begins to slide down the pyramid's eastern face, a slow, liquid gold pouring over the rough stones. It reveals color, the burnt umber of the mud brick, the gray of limestone, the black of shadow in deep recesses. The pyramid is no longer a silhouette, it is a textured reality again, warm and tangible. The guard has been relieved of its night duty, transformed back into a mountain of earth and effort. But something has changed in us. We do not see it as just a ruin anymore. We see the layers, the ambition, the fear, the engineering, the failure, the adaptation, the patience, the integration. We see the labyrinth inside, the empty sarcophagus, the settling clay. We see the silent watch under the stars. The pyramid is now transparent to its own history. It has confided in us. As the full sun clears the horizon, flooding the desert with light and warmth, we take our first steps back. We leave the pyramid's immediate presence, but we do not leave it behind. We carry it with us, the coolness of its stones, the depth of its silence, the weight of its time. We walk across the sand, now glowing in the early light. The pyramid is at our backs. We can feel its gaze, not a watching, but a blessing. It has allowed us into its confidence. It has shared its solitude. Our visit was brief, but in the scale it operates, a human lifetime is brief. We were granted an audience, and the audience is now over. The sounds of day begin, a distant bird, the rustle of a small creature in the brush, the growing warmth of the air. They are welcome. They are the sounds of our world, the world of life and change and heartbeat. The pyramid's world is the world of stone and patience. We belong to both, but our home is in the heartbeat. We reach a low ridge and turn for one last look. The Black Pyramid stands clear in the morning light, its shadows sharp, its form unmistakable. It looks solid, eternal, resolute. We know its secrets now, the cracks, the sinking, the emptiness, and that knowledge does not diminish it. It ennobles it. Its strength lies not in perfection, but in its endurance of imperfection. Its majesty lies not in triumph, but in its gracious acceptance of a different destiny than the one planned. It is the silent guard, and it will be here, keeping its watch over the frontier between desert and river, between night and day, between memory and oblivion, long after our names are forgotten. Our journey is complete. We came with curiosity. We leave with reverence, not for a pharaoh, but for time itself, not for a tomb, but for the truth that every tomb, every monument, every life is a temporary arrangement of matter in the long, slow flow of the universe. And that is beautiful. We turn away, toward the Nile, toward life, toward our own temporary arrangements. The pyramid's image is etched inside us. Its silence is now a part of our own inner quiet. Its patience is a resource we can draw upon. Its long, slow exhale is now the rhythm of our own deepest peace. Good night.